Hi guys, back again. Jamie, Football Heaven 24/7. What I'm going to do my assessment so far of Nottingham Forest season. Back in the Premier League for the first time in 23 years. It's been a bit of a struggle. There's been a few glimpses of potentially really, really good things that could happen and develop in the club. Me personally, I think don't listen to all the media hype and all the crap that they say about certain things because in today's society, it's all about instant results with everything. It's all about somebody achieving something within a few games, um, and you're judged really harshly from game to game as a manager in the Premier League or any league really in the UK. Um, I think it's grossly unfair. I think when a man has come in like Steve Cooper, the Forest manager, he's come in, he's taken a team from the bottom of the Championship after 9 games of last season into the playoffs. They won the playoff final. He done something that no manager had done for 23 years at Forest. He managed to get him into the Premier League. Then he gets him into the Premier League. Six of the main players that were in that promotions winning team, they were on loan from different clubs. They went off back to those clubs. Plus, there was other players that were out of contract, other players that were getting too old, other players that were underperforming that needed to be moved out. So, all in all, I think when Steve Cooper was about to start the Premier League season, he'd already lost something like 16 players, and obviously Forest brought in, I think it was 23 players. They brought in 23 players, and they got heavily criticised for doing that. The chairman got criticised, and his son, for doing it at the time that they did it. But you have to remember, Forest finished that season in the Championship a few weeks later than the other teams did, as far as organising stuff for the following season. Players then have got to go on holiday and rest, and so is the manager to recuperate, get re-energise, get themselves ready for the following season. There wasn't a massive period between that time of winning the playoff final, having that period of time to do the business, to train the players, to get the players to gel, the old players from the previous season and the new players that were coming in. And yeah, okay, some of the players were coming in a couple of weeks into the season, were getting recruited. I just feel they had to do a massive overhaul. They had to change the team. They had to let Steve Cooper make his mark, bring in all the players that he wanted to bring in, most of them on a permanent situation. One or two of them are coming in on loan, obviously, again. Um, but most of them have come in on a permanent situation. Now, he's rebuilding the club. Um, it was impossible. The abuse he's been getting in the last few months, it was impossible for him to be able to get Forest in the top half of the table in the Premier League with all those new players coming into the team. So what you're starting to see in the last couple of games, we had Brentford on Saturday and we drew 2-2, but there was a penalty allowed for Brentford that was definitely not even a penalty. So and then there was a push in the back of one of our players that should have been a penalty. VAR is destroying the game bit by bit. I don't care what anyone's saying. It isn't making the game any better. They're still making wrong decisions, except they're taking longer to make the wrong decisions, causing more frustration for the fans. At least when the referee was making a wrong decision before, it was made, it was done and dusted. Fans would complain, but then the game was still playing on. And it was on to the next. There wasn't none of this jumping up in the air. It's a goal, and then being told it's not a goal. It was just it was in or it wasn't in straight away. So we're still down to people's judgments. The judgments and the decisions have been they've been inconsistent on the whole, especially with things like penalties. I say scrap VAR, get rid of it. It hasn't worked in anyone's favour. It's caused Forest a few problems. It's caused other teams a lot of problems as well. But yeah, it destroyed the game on Saturday because Forest were 1-0 up. They were looking in quite a good condition. And then he goes and gives a penalty like that, destroys the game. So when those things happen, fans that are fickle or fans that have gotten really no idea about what it takes to prepare a team for a new season with a lot of new players coming in, they start to go, oh, well, it's down to the manager. The manager's doing a crap job. He's not got them organised enough. It's not this, it's not that. It's this and that. But what they're not seeing is these people that are doing VAR, these referees and assistants that are getting it really wrong, are costing people jobs at the end of the day. And those managers, they've got to manage the expectations of the fans. They've got to manage the expectations of each individual player, all the things that are going on in that player's life outside of the pitch. Yeah, they do get paid good money, but they're not in that job for very long. Most of them, if they're lucky, are in it for 20 years. But on average, most players will be in there for 15 years, barring injuries, will have a career for about 15 years. Now, okay, 15 years on a salary of, say, like 50 grand a week or 40 grand, say. I don't know what the average for Forest is. I reckon the average wage that Forest players are on are about 30 odd grand a week. Some are on a lot more than that. Obviously, Jesse Lingard's on a lot more than that. Um, and the club was quizzed on that, getting Jesse Lingard in. But for that kind of money, but it worked out his wages were going to be about 6.5 to 7 million for the whole season. Whereas if we had have bought him outright, we would have had to pay more money than that. So all these West Ham fans were obviously slating him, going, "Oh, why has he gone from West Ham to Forest?" But we got him for 6 million. They last season they were wanting to buy him for 25 million or something. So really, we've got a good deal if he can pick up after the World Cup because hasn't showed great form at the moment. To be fair, I think he's struggling. I don't know if it's stuff outside of football that's affecting that or not, but he's struggling. And well, I say he was struggling. He's there's been glimpses in the last few games that Lingard's starting to get it together. Had a few good shots off against Liverpool. Did some good contributions in that game, and he did it in Brentford. But looking at the game overall, Forest got a 2-2 draw. I still think, and I said after the Spurs game, I said at the start of the season as well, even after the West Ham game, I said they need to get other defenders in for Cook and McKenna. Cook and McKenna, they are hard-working players, but they're older players as far as in football terms. I think one's 28 or 29 and the other one's 30 or 31. Um, they're not fast enough for the the pace of the Premier League. And in the Premier League, your central defenders need to be solid. If they're not fast players, they need to be able to read the game a lot quicker than the attacking players that are around them. Unfortunately, they've been caught out on numerous times. It was shown on Saturday. Ball was played over the top. Visser beat the offside trap that they tried to set, and got put Brentford 2-1 ahead. At that point, Forest are fighting after being 1-0 ahead in the game, and they're having to get a goal right near the very end, which showed the fight that Forest had, thanks to a bit of luck in the end. The ball was tried to be cleared off the line, but it was an own goal by the Brentford player on the 96th minute, I think it was. 95th minute. But anyway, so we get a 2-2 draw. But looking at the other games in the season, obviously the standout games, we've only had 2 victories out of the first 14 games, which is pretty poor. That's what's put us at the bottom of the table. Those 2 victories are 1-0 victories at home to West Ham and 1-0 at home to Liverpool, which was the most notable one because Liverpool obviously been doing fantastic over the last sort of 4 or 5 seasons. They've done, well, 3 or 4 seasons, should I say. Obviously, there was Premier League winners a few seasons ago. So yeah, that was a great victory. West Ham rode their luck a bit, but Forest rode their luck a bit. But in the game, Forest could have been 2 or 3-0 ahead at certain stages in the game. Yates got through. Alisson pulled off a great save. There was many good things that happened in that game. Yeah, then we go away to Arsenal and we get absolutely smashed 5-0. But Arsenal are on fire this year. I'm hoping that Arsenal will win the title. I'm fed up of seeing Manchester City and Liverpool dominate. It's nice to see one of the old teams from the past who used to be winning Premier Leagues and titles start stepping up, and hopefully they can do something this season. They're still only 2 points ahead of Manchester City because obviously they won again Arsenal at the weekend. But for Forest, I'm looking. We've got Crystal Palace at home next. This is our last game. Well, in the league anyway, Crystal Palace at home next. But in the cup, we've got Tottenham coming up in midweek. I think that's on the Wednesday night. Yeah, Wednesday night. I did a prediction of 2-2 for the cup game, but going into the Crystal Palace game, I'm looking at it, I'm thinking to myself, please don't play Cook and McKenna. But I know he's going to play Cook and McKenna because I don't think he's got many other options. I would have liked to see Willy Bolly in there and possibly Niakata. If I don't know if he's still injured. I want to get him back in there, get those two lads in, and try something different. It can't be any worse because those lads, I don't think they're doing a good enough job. And I think, like I say, certain aspects of the game they're switching off, and it's costing us in the game. It did against Spurs when Harry Kane got both his goals. They wanted hardly a defender around him in that central area, and that's my main concern. I've voiced it on YouTube, on various Forest things and on different things. My opinions, of course, I've had a backlash of some of the Forest fans saying, "Oh, well, they're not organised. What do you mean pace in the Premier League? All that kind of stuff." At the end of the day, my eyes don't deceive me. I can see how a game goes. I can read how things are going on. I'm not one of these fickle fans that has a go at Steve Cooper and doesn't think, well, how long does it take to get these players to gel? We've still got another guy coming in from Palmeiras called Scarpa that's coming in from Brazilian club Palmeiras, and he's got the most assists and a lot of goals from midfield. Okay, it's in the Brazilian league; it's not quite as good up to the Premier League level, but there's been many times players have come from Brazil that have been performing well in the Brazilian league, the top flight, and they've done well. So I'm hoping that him coming in it's a little bit something different. We were relying on Jesse Lingard to get the assists and to work a bit of magic for the team, maybe get a couple of goals. But I'm hoping this Scarpa will make a massive difference. Gibbs White is coming on an absolute treat. Gibbs White and Henderson are probably our best players this season. Ryan Yates as well has put in a couple of great performances at home. They're my sort of standout players. Johnson's got a couple of goals this season, but I feel he could do a little bit more. I feel he's still adjusting as a young lad to the difference between the Championship and the Premier League. But I feel like he'll come good eventually. I still fancy him to get about 8 to 10 goals this season, Johnson. Taiwo Awoniyi, the guy that came in from Union Berlin, is doing really good. I think pretty good for Forest. He's got 3 goals. I think it's just a work in progress. I think ultimately it will come down for Forest like it will do for other teams that are in the relegation zone, Wolves and Southampton, and other teams just outside, which I believe is like Everton and West Ham. Unless I think it will come down to home form for a lot of the teams. Leicester, I think, are going to pull away now. They're starting to look like their old selves. West Ham did look like they were pulling away, but they had a bit of a sucker punch at the weekend, losing 2-1 at home to Crystal Palace in the 94th minute. They were a bit unlucky in the end to lose that, but I still think West Ham could get dragged down into it. I don't just mean that because I know quite a lot of West Ham fans where I am living locally in Essex, um, but yeah, it'd be interesting to find out. I'm going to sound biased being a Forest fan, but I still think we've got enough at home to be able to pull it out of the bag. I feel like we'll get a few draws and maybe the odd win away from home as the season goes on. I think we will get stronger as a team. We are getting tighter defensively. Well, actually, I was going to say we're getting tight defensively, but we're not really. We're letting 7 goals in the last 2 games. But having said that, away at Arsenal and Manchester City, it was to be expected that we'd get smashed, especially with Championship quality defenders, which I don't mean to dig out McKenna and Cook, but I think Cook needs to be realistic and realise, yeah, he's a great player last year in the Championship, but a lot of the fans do love him, but at the end of the day, I just don't think he's quick enough for the Premier League. He's had his time with Bournemouth doing quite well in the Premier League. I just think it's time that Steve Cooper made a few decisions that will upset maybe one or two of fans or the players themselves, but you've got to make those crucial decisions if you want to be successful. I think success for Forest is becoming a consistent team in the Premier League and sort of getting to the mid-table area consistently, perhaps even occasionally getting in the top half. Uh, Kind of like what Burnley used to do before with Sean Dyche before they got rid of Sean Dyche. So that's what I'm sort of like hoping for Forest. I still think we've got enough to stay up. I think we could do a Leeds United special like they did last season. Probably stay up on the last day or a few games to spare. I think we've got enough in this at home. But we'll see what pans out. Reasonably confident. Like I say, the performances of Dean Henderson, the goalkeeper on loan from Manchester United, has been absolutely fantastic, especially in a lot of the home games. And as I say, Ryan Yates is coming on really well as the captain. Johnson's playing some decent games, and also he can't even say his name properly. Gibbs White though is the standout from the outfield players at the moment. He's doing some great stuff. He showed a lot of trickery. He contributed to a lot in the last couple of home games. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how some of these players come on. But obviously, all I'm going to say is you Reds and keep supporting the lads, keep getting behind them. We are going to do something, I think, quite special this year as far as getting out of this situation. I know we go into the international break in the relegation zone, even if we do beat Palace on Saturday. Next Saturday, should I say, or this Saturday coming up even. But we'll see what happens. Remain confident, be loyal, support your team. Let's get behind them. Go on, you Reds. Bye for now.